Hi, everybody. Nice to see all of you here. Well, I'll introduce Ruben Adery. He's my dialect coach. He's also a friend of mine. We meet in Madrid 1 year ago. We have very good friends in common. And he actually lives in LA. He is from Michigan, originally from Michigan. He's a dialect coach, a linguist, and a polyglot. Polyglot, isn't it? How many
Mhm.
languages do you speak, Ruben? Actually,
I would say I speak five languages fluently, and I'm learning three or four more at the moment.
yeah. Well,
It's
not
crazy.
bad, not bad, not bad. And some of you, the public, will be wondering why is Carlos making this kind of video now? Well, Ruben is helping me to improve my English, my accent, because I'm starting in the English speaking market as a high ticket closer, sales professional, and he's helping me in this project. Although my English is not perfect, at this moment I'm making improvements about it, and I want to document the process so that people can see month by month, and when 1 year from now to see how things are changing. Um, you don't have to wait till things are perfect. That's why I want to document the process. Yeah. And I know that many people some people they may be scared what others will say, fear of failure, and also it's one of the main fears that people have. They don't want to speak English because they are fearful of making mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I consider that the role of Ruben is very useful because he's expert at speaking, learning languages, how we as a person will learn the structure of any language, the pronunciations. Well, tell me whatever you want to start saying, Ruben.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here too, and for going through this. I admire you as a person, and of course, anybody who wants to like take their language skills to the next level is a good person to for me to come in contact with because I can offer a lot. Like you said, I'm a dialect coach, a linguist, and a polyglot. So I help language learners and teachers and performers to develop a more native or natural accent in five different foreign languages so they can build confidence and connect more deeply with other native speakers and non-native speakers and to feel more clear, in conversation. So I spend a lot of time paying attention to how people sound and I always say, accents speak louder than words. So that's kind of like a play on this famous or kind of well-known phrase, actions speak louder than words. But yeah, it's like the accents kind of shape the way that people hear you. And before they even process what you're saying, they're going to hear your accent. In those first few seconds, you have an opportunity to make a first impression. Maybe the only opportunity to make a first impression. So yeah, I'm just glad to connect with you, and especially anyone working in sales or in business who are facing, uh, you know, native English speakers and just want to give off that impression. It's super important to feel confident in yourself.
Mhm. Exactly. I've noticed the importance of improving your accent, your English, when I listen to someone that I don't understand. Mm,
Mm.
And it happens also, for example, in Spain. Here in Spain, we have different accents, and sometimes it's even difficult for me understand the accent of people from the south. It's like, can you repeat, please? Or so imagine someone who is not English native speaker. Well, tell me about your impressions about it, Ruben, about how important is to have at least a decent accent in English so that anyone can understand you.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, accents are everywhere, and especially in a country like Spain or in the United States where there's so many variations. It's who you are is your identity. And so coming from your what you mentioned here, being able to understand other people is sometimes just about the awareness and knowing which accents exist and what to expect. Because if you don't have any idea and you're going into a conversation with people who speak a little bit differently, you can easily be caught off guard, like you just mentioned, even from people who speak your own language. And having some awareness of it, it feels like the form of the language. I know that you have a background in fitness and in exercise, and we often come back to those analogies of like having good form, and it's so true that the accent is kind of the form of your language. So people can kind of tell early on. You can tell yourself, and you can kind of look around and listen to other people in your life and to perceive what type of accents they have and how is their form, so to speak. And it just gives kind of a connection to the world for me, just to know what's out there. Just like, fashion or anything that's kind of a personal style and a choice. So we all have choices. We all can decide how to speak. We can change and modify our accents, which we can talk more about. But yeah, it's fascinating to me, so I'm just happy to talk about this. I could talk about this for hours, so we'll try to keep it short.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say, Ruben? Which are the keys to improve the English accent? Which are the key components that anyone needs to have into consideration to improve?
Well, I mean, obviously it depends on which accent you're going for. So we're talking about American English accents in our work together. So I guess the first step is to identify which accent is the target for you. And I know a lot of people in Spain, for example, will learn British English naturally. And the pronunciation, because the language is basically the same, more or less, from country to country, the accent is really what makes it stand out. And so whether you pronounce an R like a British, English R, or all these vowel sounds that might change, the key is to first see what the goal is, and maybe just as important is to understand your native accent, which is really not that common. It's pretty wild how often like you hear that people just don't know fundamental things about their own language because you don't have to. You're a native speaker, you can just speak however you want to speak, and then you're perfect. Like whatever you say as a native speaker is correct and fine. And you could argue with other native speakers, but it's you can still have that confidence to know what you're saying is right in quotes. And so in order to improve something or modify it, you kind of need to know that. Where's point A and where's point B? And starting that, even that process is kind of complex because there's not as many resources out there to identify what are the sounds that you need to change. And so that's the work that you have to do, either with a coach or with an AI model or some kind of combination of resources. It's important to see where I'm starting from and what the target is, and then what are those differences. There are sounds that are very obvious, like a R in Spanish, a trill in Spanish is pretty clearly different from English. But things like a T, like tu, te, ta, this pronunciation instead of tu is subtle. It's a lot less
Mhm.
obvious. And so you really need to identify the more obvious sounds to get those, pretty clear and of course be able to pronounce them well. You should also identify what those smaller, subtle nuances are. And that might be a personal thing. Like you might be really good at one sound and the next person is a little bit has a little bit more of a challenge with it. But I'm also coming at it from a very technical uh, background and also from a technical approach. I like to
Mhm.
know how things work personally. And so if you're not that kind of person, immersion is also very helpful, and imitating, if you're good at just picking up things and imitating accents, that's a part of it. But I think ultimately you can imitate as well as you can, just like the actors of the world. But it's hard to come back to confident, a confident place knowing what I'm saying is, let's say, perfect for me because, we want to really know what those differences are. So being clear about what my target is and working on those individual sounds. You could even make a big difference, as we've seen together, with one vowel sound, with one, consonant sound, with putting the stress on the right syllable, right? Depending on where you emphasize a word can change the meaning completely. Like present, presentar, or present, regalo. You change the word spelled the same, but present, present, it emphasizes a different syllable. And so rhythm and linking and tone, we call this prosody, la prosodia. So this whole package is what it's all about. And if you can identify those things yourself, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and you mentioned something very interesting. I've lived that before. I remember that I studied 1 year abroad in Lithuania, and for 1 year I had to speak all day in English. Prior to that, I got the first certificate in English, B2 level, but during that year, my English skyrocketed. It improved enormously. Like you said, one of the aspects is the immersion. Um, I admit that before we started, uh, my English was rusty, was very rusty, and I lost the skill. Now, what I'm doing, I'm trying to do this kind of immersion in the ways that are possible for me because at this stage of my life, I can't go live anywhere. So I try to do my best, listening everything in English, reading everything in English, speaking most of the time in English, even thinking in English, and also writing in English, wherever I can.
Yeah, that is huge. Immersion is a part of it. It just makes you feel more connected. You have more experience, more exposure to different words and phrases and different accents. I often, if I can't immerse myself, I'll watch a show or typically a reality show where there are many different people, different accents, and put myself in the world of whatever's going on. Love is Blind or something, and just to be able to perceive things and be better at listening and training my ear. I think anybody can do that. I think some people, even if you don't think you're a language person or if your skills are high, like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but being able to be consistent and practicing certain things that you find are fun, it keeps you motivated, it keeps you in the language, and it will ultimately give you results.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Which advice would you give, Ruben, to someone who wants to improve the structure of in the, I mean, in the writing format? When someone is trying to write in English,
Hmm.
that person is trying to catch fluently. Which advice would you give to that person? Because it's something that is tricky for many people, that part.
Yeah, you mean writing in a formal sense or in like texting or in anything?
In anything, in formal, in job related,
Hmm.
any kind of endeavor, whatever.
Well, I'll share a few things. Writing isn't my expertise, although I work with languages and I could definitely share some insight on this. I kind of find they're very similar. The accent and the writing process is, being able to identify where your weaknesses are and seeing what needs to change. But I'll give you some specifics. A lot of times when you learn English as a foreign language or a second language, you tend to write formally, always. And that includes saying I am instead of I'm, or he is instead of he's, and these contractions and things like that. And to be very honest, most native speakers will write these days like they speak. And emails and texts are included here. Speaking professionally doesn't mean you're speaking formally, whatever that means. I think there's this difference between writing and speaking in any language, in many languages at least. And there's this kind of distance you put when you're writing formally, and it sounds professional, sure, official, maybe, but it also doesn't sound like you as a speaker. And so if you use different words and if you change your tone, you could really change your whole identity. And not everybody needs to do that. We sometimes want to come off as a, a clear, confident speaker, and that comes through in writing. Oftentimes your tone, your voice will be a unique part of your writing. And so obviously the minimum is to keep things grammatical and don't, not make mistakes that are kind of native to your language, translating literally from Spanish to English, for example. It's important to just kind of see where those stylistic changes occur. So contractions are one example. Using idioms, expressions or phrases. I'm not talking about cliches like no pain, no gain or something like that. It's just more like it's up to you, something like that, or whatever you want. These types of combinations of words that are more, idiomatic, as we say, they're more like tied to your language. If you can pepper those in, phrasal verb. If you can pepper, like kind of sprinkle them in and kind of include them here and there, it starts to give off this impression like, oh my God, this person really knows English, really knows what they're doing. And not because you're impressing them with even an accent. With regard to writing, you're just writing, so you can't see the accent. You can't hear the accent, but you can tell that someone has experience, being funny. If you're funny, don't try to be funny if you're not, but trying to show personality through your writing, being a little bit different, a little bit you, even making jokes that aren't things you've heard before, being uh, playful and goofy, which is kind of my style. When I speak Spanish, I have an Argentinian accent, and so it's very el tonito argentino. You have to play, and often I'm imitating the Spanish accent, and that type of thing might even come through in my writing because that's the type of person I am. So I would start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, because you learn Spanish in Argentina, isn't it? The first time it's funny though, because the first time when I met you in person, I asked you, "Are you from Argentina?" Isn't it? I thought you were from Argentina, honestly.
That's the whole, I mean, that's my whole purpose in life, I think. At this point, I started learning Spanish in college at the University of Michigan, and it was a very kind of theoretical, like language literature background. And I didn't really have let's call it a natural accent. I would probably say it was pretty Americanized. It wasn't so the gringo Shanky accent exactly, but it just wasn't from anywhere. And I moved to Buenos Aires, and I really felt that difference. And anywhere a lot of places in Latin America and Spain have such a unique identity. And so I did that thing that we're talking about here. I studied linguistics as well as a kind of a double concentration. And I kind of had a little bit of an advantage where I knew a little bit more about phonetics and phonology and kind of what to listen for and what's that called. And so as I was imitating my roommates, and they would say, che, pasame la toalla, boludo. It was like this. Then I would go to myself, I would just say, che, pasame la toalla. I would kind of like imitate this tone and this, and then people started to say, because I looked like this. It wasn't so crazy that I might be from Argentina, but the voice came out, and people would think like, of course you're from Argentina, because you just said, no, 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 gracias, with this imitate this such a unique version of Spanish that most people anywhere in the Spanish speaking world will like pinpoint, boom, Argentino. And wherever I go, that's the first impression. I'll say one or two words, or even the first 10 seconds, and this is the expectation. And I love it. I This is kind of why I became a coach, because I started feeling this positive encouragement and this vibe where I wanted to share that with other people. I wanted other people to feel the confidence and this connection, because not only do people think I'm Argentinian, they they keep the conversation in Spanish because of my accent. They're like, okay, this guy speaks Spanish. And I don't say my level I don't tell them I have a B2, whatever, first certificate. I just said, che, boludo, pasame la toalla. And it was this connection that they felt with me. They were like, come to the asado with my grandma because you speak Spanish well enough and you could hang and you can really stay in the game. And that what that does is it keeps the conversation in Spanish so that I have more exposure to now different vocabulary, to different people's accents, more connections. It's this snowball effect where just because I had a pretty native like accent, now we're just in a world where I'm supposedly Argentinian and like playing this character, and I'm just rolling with it.
Yeah, now I wonder, will it arrive the day where someone tells Carlos, Carlos, you're American, right?
Let's not rule that out. I mean, first impressions. We'll work on that first impression. That's key.
First impressions, yeah, it will be funny moment if it happens. I hope it will happen somewhere in the future.
Well, I want that for you too.
Yeah, yeah. So, anything else, Ruben, that you would like to add concerning learning English, improving the English language, accent, wherever that may be useful for people that want to get into the English speaking market as a sales
Yeah,
professional to get any other kind of job, but in English worldwide? Tell me.
yeah, speaking clearly, it removes this friction, I would say. People understand you the first time and it basically saves time and energy for everybody. In a professional setting, it helps your ideas land the way that you intended, which is sometimes a problem, in sales or any area. Um, and you're not making the listener take this cognitive effort to meet you halfway. That's usually what's happening. If someone has a strong accent, the listener is like putting together the pieces. Did you say this or these? Did you say, it or eat? There's such small differences between these things. And so my brain's working a little bit extra to kind of find what words you're saying based on context. And so as a speaker, it gives you control. You can decide how you show up in different environments, and you won't feel stuck as much with this kind of default setting. I
Hmm.
speak one way, and this is who I am. So it boosts confidence because you're not really worried about the miscommunications and misunderstandings, and you definitely won't have to repeat yourself, more than a couple times. And if you do, you can repeat yourself with the same accent. Maybe there was some background noise, or maybe there was something else, but it wasn't. You can think to yourself, "Oh, that wasn't me. I said it clearly," and that's a game changer for anybody.
Hmm. Nice. So I think concerning this topic of the accent, English, if you want to add something else, for me is everything okay. I want to open a new topic, Ruben, that is for me very interesting.
Vale.
You travel quite a lot, right? Quite often.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I've been to like 24 or 5 countries this year alone.
Oh, 24, you said
This year has been very special,
this
but
year.
yeah, I'll probably travel, for 3 or 4 months out of the year, and often for business purposes.
Yeah, and I wonder how do you manage your sleep, your energy levels? How do you manage those changes? For example, you are from LA. Those are 9 hours difference compared to Spain, for example. If you go
Hmm.
to any other country, imagine Emirates is 11 hours of difference. So how do you manage
Yeah.
those time zones change?
It's a great question too. My strategy is more consistency and not perfection. You can strive for perfect sleep and all that stuff. I usually try to find a balance when it comes to this is just something personal to me, but I'll let you in on this kind of trifecta of how I spend my time. I kind of balance being alone and appreciating solitude and space. And when I'm moving around the world, it's a little easier to be alone that way. I like to be with friends and family and really deeply connect and be speaking and constantly getting more engaged with people in my life. And then there's this third stage where I'm like kind of in the world. I'll go take a yoga class. I'll talk, but I won't really be immersed in the culture necessarily. And those three feelings of like, okay, I can rest, I can be alone. All right, now it's time to engage, it's time to perform, it's time to speak and use the language. And then I have these opportunities to maybe listen more and be in that yoga class and just be like, oh, I learned a new word. All right, I'm kind of just, I'm not required to do much. And that seems to give me enough energy and balance it throughout the day where sure there's jet lag and things. And I also say that I give myself time, a couple days at least to give myself space and grace and kindness to know that, hey, I'm doing my best. And if I have that core balance, it's really key. Anchoring things in even just having a little espresso in the morning, wherever I am in the world. Um, Journaling and things that maybe people are into themselves, but there's not really a secret besides for me besides that. I feel fortunate to not have any needs to have any specific things like foods or drinks if I'm traveling in some place where they don't offer that. And sometimes I am running on a tired streak or kind of functionally tired, but I make it work. It seems to be a fun challenge and a value of mine to be flexible and to be resilient and
Mhm.
to work on growth, which is a part of any language learner's journey.
Yeah, exactly, because routines are very important for our daily life, but most more important is to be flexible and resilient, to have this capacity to be resilient is, I think, more important. Play with both. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you're you. You can listen to yourself and listen to your body, and it's a practice, just like language learning and a lot of things working out. I always find a gym in a new city. I find it not only good for my health, but it's cultural. Going to a random city gym surrounded by like I remember this place I went to in Montenegro. You just like, it's the same culture, but it's just like slightly different, and it feels just like a cultural experience because we're all practicing something, staying healthy and exercising our bodies, but in a slightly different way, and how people talk and how people gather at the gym or who's looking at who, what they're wearing. And these are all parts of it. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. When I tend to travel, I try to go to the most local places as possible. For example, which are the most typical gyms in the location. For example, when I travel to the Netherlands or to Portugal or whatever country, I try to go to those areas, the less touristic areas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where all the excitement is, It's where you learn the most and where you get the coolest experience, I think.
Mhm. Nice. So, Ruben, I think it has been a great chat today. We can have another day of whatever things that maybe people want to speak about or things that comes up to our mind any other day. So, a pleasure speak to you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me here too, Carlos. It's cool to do this. I mean, you're doing this in English. I respect you, I admire you and everything that you're working on these days. And at the end of the day, it's not about right or wrong. You're expressing yourself. You're choosing, words and in a foreign language. And so you understand how it works. You can adjust things as you go. And we're working towards that time where when people mistake you for an American English speaker from a
I
foreign
hope so that that day arrives anytime soon in the future.
as soon as
I will
yeah.
I will add your social media and your links here in the description below in case that anyone wants to reach out to you later on. So speak to you soon, Ruben.
Thanks so much.
Take care.